Order, order. Hello and welcome to Reporters Without Orders, a podcast where we talk about what made news, what didn't, and some things that absolutely shouldn't have. I'm your host Tanishka Sodhi, and joining me today is Newslaundry's very own reporter Sumedha Mittal, whose stories you must have seen enough to be familiar with on Newslaundry. And we have with us Neerja Deodhar, the Deputy Assistant Editor at Midday, a daily newspaper in Mumbai. Hi guys, thank you for joining us, Neerja, all the way from Bombay.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. I've been a Newslaundry fan for a few years now.
How is the weather in Bombay? I hear that winter has come and gone, and the 2 days of winter has passed already.
I see that you're wearing a scarf and like a very thick sweater, and I'm sitting here without the fan on. I feel like that's definitely an improvement on most
For
years.
Bombay, it is definitely. I'm from Bombay too, so that is our winter, right? Peak winter as it gets.
The peak winter. After this, we're staring at 4 months of summer. Yeah.
Yeah, and then 6 months of monsoon.
Yes.
Which, and again, floods will come, and Midday also does a phenomenal job of city reportage as well. So, disasters will come and go, but journalism is here to document it and question those in power. So, on that very odd note, let's start. Neerja's story from Sunday is titled Right to Teach, and it explores how college professors in India are observing a growing culture of surveillance. So, Meda's story, meanwhile, is about how several PSA prisoners from Kashmir have been languishing in jail despite having the detention quashed. Now, why this happens, Sumedha will tell us when we speak about her story. But let's start with Neerja's story now. Neerja, can you tell us a little bit about this trend that you have observed in your story and how many case studies you found that reflected?
So it all began with the publication of the report of the Academic Freedom Index. And what I observed was that this was a trend that had emerged over the last year, but it is symptomatic of issues that have been underlying for more than that. So this report is released by the WeDem Institute. According to it, in the Academic Freedom Index, India ranks at 130. And the reason why this number made headlines is because we're behind our neighbors, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. But of course, there is more to the report than just that. According to the report, we score on the respect given to academic freedom is 0.38 on a total of 1. And there are limitations to the report, of course, because it considers countries with very large populations like India and China in the same way that it considers countries with much smaller populations, but it does recognize certain trends like how academic freedom has been on a downward spiral since 2009, how particularly factors like campus integrity and institutional autonomy have been affected since 2013. Both of these factors are about how colleges and institutions are affected by surveillance and politics outside of these institutions, and how universities are able to shield themselves from it to be able to function autonomously, to take decisions independently. So that's where it began. And over the years, I've noticed that a lot of professors have been targeted in a very personal capacity. So in 2022, actually, there was one professor from St. Xavier's, Kolkata, who was pulled up for some photographs she put up on a private Instagram account. It seems that a student's parent had found those photographs, or he observed his son looking at those photographs, and she was pulled up for that. Then in June, there was a Kolhapur professor who had undertaken a class discussion about gender. And she made a point about how the perpetrators of sexual violence can come from any religion. And she was targeted because of that and sent on forced leave later. Then there is the case of a Mumbai professor at an engineering institute in October who was targeted because of her choice of guest lecturer. And finally, I think the peg for the story was really something that happened in December, in late December. There was a law professor in Haryana who had used Bumble as part of her teaching methodology. She'd used Bumble to explain how desire and attraction works in India, given that so much of our behavior is defined by caste, by class, and a number of other factors. She'd also, in an email, pointed out that she saw students chant Jai Shri Ram on campus, and she raised questions about whether that slogan belongs over there. In the course of a couple of weeks, she was targeted because there's an FIR against her actually, and that's why I couldn't interview her for this story because of her FIR. She was advised not to speak to the media. The FIR is about harming the dignity of women and discriminating against students on a religious and ideological basis. If you told me 10 years ago that a teacher would be targeted and there would be an FIR against her for things she had said in class or the pedagogy she'd used, I would find that very difficult to believe. And here the story has a slightly personal connect. When I was in 2014, I was a student of St. Xavier's College. And it's also the year that I first voted in a general election. In the wake of the election, our then principal, Father Fraser Mascarenhas, had sent out an email to students, the entire student body, telling us to vote responsibly and in a way that he thought would be becoming of students who had just turned 18, who would be voting for the very first time in an election. So he kind of sent this email. He wasn't targeting a particular political party. He wasn't saying you should be voting for XYZ person and not this person, but there was certainly a storm caused by that. And the local BJP cadre did file a complaint against him before the ECI because our college is also a government affiliated college. So there were repercussions over there. So, but I think we've traveled a very long distance between Father Fraser being able to send that email in 2014 to the Kolhapur professor who was targeted simply for saying that perpetrators of sexual violence can belong to any religion. And it made me wonder also about our teachers now looking over their shoulders. These are, of course, cases where teachers have obviously been targeted or there has been a certain repercussion to what they've said in class. But is it causing a larger culture of violence and self censorship? And I found that that was true. There were professors who came forward and spoke on the record, but I have a couple of sources who I use for background who mentioned that they had started replacing Indian examples in classes of social science subjects, liberal arts, media, with examples outside of India, which would explain the same phenomena, the same concepts, because they were not sure how these Indian examples would be perceived in class. How would they be received in class? How would students respond to them? Teachers have also become very careful about the kind of guest lecturers they invite. And I mean, this is not, some of these things are not new, to be honest. A college professor or a teacher at both the undergrad and postgrad level is responsible for the student's safety, for their ability to think freely, for them to not be endangered in the class situation. So if they are going to vet a guest lecturer to make sure that that guest lecturer is not going to say something that is going to hurt the sentiments of students who are minorities or something like that, those things are normal. But now teachers are being very careful about what they say in class. I remember 10 years ago, the screening of a documentary like Anand Patwardhan's Jai Bhim Comrade would be part of the syllabus. Like it would be explicitly mentioned that this documentary is going to be screened. But now Rituparna Padgiri, who is a sociologist and has 5 years of teaching experience, told me that her peers are scared about what they will screen
Right.
in classrooms
I
because
think so much
they
of
don't
it
know how
is
to be
also
received.
because of phones now, right? You can just
Yeah.
record anything, and there have been so many videos that have originated from the classroom, So it's obviously a student who has taken it, and everything goes viral now when it has the right amount of spice or whatever they say. But I wanted to ask you, Neerja, when you're speaking about targeting, of course, in the case of the Haryana teacher, there was an FIR, but in the other cases, what is targeting? Is it backlash from the students? Is it from the university or college? Or is it from people online once they come to know of the incident?
So I think it's a mix of all of those things, and like you mentioned, the mobile phone I think plays a very huge part in
Yeah.
this censorship, surveillance, all of these issues that are coming forth. I think there was an established power dynamic in the classroom until a few years ago when the usage of mobile phones was just a discipline related pet peeve of college professors. They tell you to focus on class, they tell you not to look at your phone, not to text in the middle of class. But now technology has become, it has changed that power dynamic. Now a teacher can be held responsible for what they say in class regardless of whether what they're saying is in violation of the college's rules, guidelines, whatever that may be. And I saw a pattern in all of these case studies where a video would be taken, the video would be uploaded to social media or passed on from student to student. It would end up on social media, the teacher would be named, there would be calls for her suspension or even her dismissal from the college. And then there would be pressure on the college authorities to act. I have found that in some cases, students have gone directly, like the engineering institute, students have gone directly to the dean or the principal and said, this happened in class, we want some action to be taken. But in a lot of cases, it is a result of these videos going viral on social media. So I do think that whoever's recording these videos knows the kind of response that will take place or the kind of trajectory that video will take. And in terms of backlash, I think everything from an FIR to being sent on forced leave, we don't know that teacher has resumed. She's still listed on the college's website, so I'm guessing that she is still part of the campus, but she was sent on forced leave. And there are others who have gone a little silent ever since they were pulled up for taking a decision like this. I remember in the case of the Calcutta teacher, I don't think she was essentially let go of because then she started working in Delhi.
And I think all of this also probably leads to a precedent, right? Like your story mentions how teachers have started being apprehensive about what they screen or what they discuss outside of the textbook per se. And like you mentioned that some of them have started using examples from other countries. So would this be counted as self-censorship? And if yes, what could the possible impact of this be, on the students and on the system and just academic freedom in general?
So I've been thinking a lot about the kind of cases I haven't covered in my piece, and maybe that will make for a good follow-up someday. I noticed that a lot of the cases coming forward, even after the publication of my piece, were not STEM courses. They were not STEM institutes. It was usually a liberal arts course in a STEM institute, or it was a media college, or it was a college where law was taught, like in the Haryana professor's case. And I think this boils down to the notion of open debate, critical thinking, both of which are very important to college. So I've also learned over the course of the last 2 weeks that the way pedagogy works in the undergraduate level and the postgraduate level is very different. In the undergraduate level, I think it's a little bit like a continuation from school. There is pressure to finish the syllabus on time. There is a pressure to stick to deadlines, timelines, all of these for both students and the faculty. In the postgraduate level, if academic freedom is being affected, it affects the very notion of knowledge production, because that's where people engage in original research. But regardless of everything, I think, so there is a professor and also a poet and author quoted in the piece called Sumana Roy. Sumana Roy pointed out that it's not self-censorship happening in a country where education is already strengthened and boosted, capacity building part of our country. It is a part of our country, and it is an educational experience where there is rote learning. There is the hiring of teachers who are not of the best quality. So students aren't receiving an ideal kind of schooling anyway. They're not receiving both because of the larger systemic issues and also specific issues that may be there. Schooling and college is not ideal in India. And if you were to introduce self-censorship and surveillance to a system that's already less than ideal, students aren't going to be prompted to think critically.
Yeah, and
I think ultimately the openness to debate question is definitely affected.
right. And in liberal arts courses or social sciences courses, that is at the very core, like you said, right? I mean, I think even in some undergrad courses, like mine was mass media, where our professors very freely discussed things outside the syllabus. And it was a very open environment where we spoke of things not related to the classroom, because they also wanted us to develop critical thinking and just have debates, question everything, including the professors. So I really do understand why this would be an issue, especially for non-STEM courses. And Neerja, you also spoke to the Indian Academic Freedom Network. What is this network, and what did they have to say about this growing trend?
So they're a year-old network, which I also found interesting because it means that the issue is so pressing that the need for such a network came up. They are academics across India. I think you'll notice them in reports wherever any of these college professors has been suspended or there's been some action taken against them. This is usually the academic body that comes forward. They are from across institutions in India who come out in solidarity of the professor who's been affected. And they normally hold meetings both online and offline to discuss any issues that may be there. The last couple of meetings have also dealt with subjects like Israel Palestine, how it should be addressed in the classroom, or about other things in pedagogy. So it's a group of like-minded people who want to showcase solidarity in those cases where teachers have been affected, but also they discuss their issues in the classroom about the same subjects, about critical thinking, about how everyday reality should be discussed in the classroom, which is quite theory oriented. So those are their main concerns. And they pointed out that they are seeing a complete change in the university campus, meaning that they've heard from their predecessors about how unorthodox they were and how orthodox they're having to be. So I think that change was really palpable in what the conversation I had with them.
Right. And what about the traditional union bodies? Do they have any stance on this, or are they not very open to really addressing what is happening?
Not that I've come across. It's usually solidarity on a very individualized basis, meaning that there'll be Excel documents sent across, or there'd be like a Google form where people asked if they would like to express solidarity. Or it is groups like the Indian Academic Freedom Network who will come forth and say, we're putting out a solidarity appeal. Would you like to add your name? I think it also, so one of my sources who I spoke to for background research mentioned that one of these cases, one of these case studies, there was such a solidarity appeal put forth. And the principal of the college in question wrote to them asking why they had circulated this to begin with. So I would say that the crackdown on even showing solidarity is so strong that I'm not surprised that groups aren't up in arms.
Yeah.
It's a really
And
sad state of
Sumedha had also
affairs.
covered the
Yeah.
things
Ashoka
happening in
University.
Ashoka. I think there was a similar trend you
Yeah,
had.
and the fact and the point which Neerja has highlighted in her story that like it's mostly non-STEM courses.
Right.
So while I was reporting on Ashoka, I had also come across these events, and so there was this Trivedi Center for Political Data which has been now shut down. So there's a Trivedi family who was actually funding Trivedi Center for Political Data, and when that political center came under attack, the funds were diverted to STEM courses. So I mean, I have just said it. I mean, things are going to materialize, but that was the word inside the Ashoka University, that fund is not maybe going to be used for the biomedical sciences courses. So it just shows that
Yeah.
like how we are cracking down on
And I
such
think-
important institutions which are about liberal arts.
I think, educational institutions have either been trying to be apolitical or showing solidarity with
Correct.
the ruling party. Like, I think even for the Ram Mandir inauguration, a lot
Huh.
of colleges did have functions.
Yeah.
I was in Goa and I saw Bits Pilani have flags all over,
Yeah.
outside and inside,
IIT
which was a little
Bombay.
startling to see Birla Institute of, Science and Technology.
There was a Shobha
really
Yatra
embrace.
at IIT Bombay which was like carried out
Yeah, IIT
on the
Bombay
same day.
went all out.
And despite IIT Bombay such a strong Ambedkar society inside the IIT Bombay, who take up every issue, who coordinates
Right.
with media, like they are the most active group, and despite them, these things are being carried out. It's really sad state of affairs, and they are
Yeah.
going after everyone, not just
Yeah.
teachers or academic institutions, but even students also.
Yeah, and I think like how your story highlights, Neerja, it's like
Yeah.
a lot of it is leading to self-censorship, right? Which could be
Yeah.
so detrimental to the students' learning process
It
if
is.
you have to stick just to the textbook. And, screenings like the whole last year, I think around this time was the crackdown
Yeah.
on the BBC documentary
Yeah.
in a lot of parts of Delhi and outside
And it's become
Delhi
a
as well.
norm. Like in Aligarh, like while there was this one story which I did on like how 20 FIRs have been lodged against over 1,000 students in Aligarh Muslim University, and all those FIRs were suo motu FIRs by the police for the students just for protesting against those issues which don't fall in the line of the government.
Right.
And now the students told me that earlier they used to carry out like some 5 to 10 protests every month, but now that has been completely shut down. They said just we are so afraid to even post a tweet or post anything on Facebook which goes against the line of the government.
Is the teachers' social media usage also something that is being affected? Is that something you've come across as well?
teachers' social media usage, their interactions with students over email or even in person. So this was another subject that I wanted to cover. Sumedha saying about the atmosphere on campus and whether students are able to screen films, have conversations. There are a lot of study groups and there are a lot of reading groups that exist in colleges. Maybe that culture doesn't exist as much in Bombay as it does in Delhi, but I think the reason why I wanted to write this piece is that so many times in a student's life, it is the teacher who begins a certain train of thought. It is the teacher who exposes them to ways of thinking that they may not be exposed to at home or otherwise. And a huge part of the professor's role in college is their interactions with students outside of class. That's where a teacher tells you, oh, this is a university you should be thinking of for your postgrad course, or have you considered this career trajectory? And those conversations are incredible in value for students and also for teachers. I mean, that is how they connect with their students at the end of the day. This is not a case of a teacher coming and giving lectures for whatever number of hours that is assigned to them and covering the syllabus. That's of course a priority, but if teachers' interactions with students on social media, on email, in campus is being under the radar, then that is definitely a concern. But from what I can see, teachers are still, so as Sumana puts it in the piece, there is still a way to explore the syllabus beyond the syllabus. And teachers before them have done it, teachers after them will do it. And Shamli Gupta, who I also quoted in the piece, talks about how there are students writing to her years later about her interventions outside the classroom and how important they were to her. So students still see her as a friend.
Yeah.
So I think that is the one place where teachers can, take control of the narrative and still impact students in the way that they wish to.
Definitely. And before we discuss Sumedha's story, I want to also ask you guys whether there has been a teacher that you have encountered in your educational process that has really left an impact. Neerja, has there been a professor or a teacher that has really left a mark?
So I think when he was in college, he was a principal, of course, and we saw him as, the upholder of rules and regulations. But now, after having done this story, I have great respect for Father Fraser. He also stood up for Stan Swami when Stan Swami was in prison. And I think he had a very clear idea of his ideals and what he stood up for. I think I really respect him for that now. And, there can be endless debate about what it means to impinge on a student's politics or a young person's politics, because like you mentioned, during the Ram Mandir consecration, educational institutes were participating in it. Is that an impingement on students' personal life? Is it Father Fraser sending that email? These things are up for debate, but now in retrospect, I think I really respect him.
Definitely. Sumedha, what about you?
Yeah, many, like 2 at ACJ. One was our head of television, Nishad sir. Then there was Sri Kumar Menon sir. Though I was in television, but he was head of print. He really used to help me a lot. And then there was my physics professor when I was in 11th and 12th. And he was like really someone who hand-holded me throughout those tough days of my board examinations. What about you, Tanishka?
I think many, and ACJ too, but I think there was one professor in Wilson College, Professor Sudhakar Solman Raj. I don't know if you've heard of him, Neerja, since you're also from Bombay, but
Seems like a familiar name. Yeah.
He is a legendary professor who really leaves an imprint and opens your mind to, questioning everything, being critical. He would tell us, why aren't you questioning, the fees that you're paying? Just question absolutely everything. And we would have our discussions. He would get us lyrics of songs and we would learn about history through music. And there was a very very different sort of touch that he brought to the department, which was really precious. And I think that's something that I could see being curtailed in times like this, So it's another reason why
I feel sad for the upcoming generation. What can
definitely. Before we get more reflected, even though I'm very tempted to speak more about our experiences. Sumedha, let's discuss your story. So it details how prisoners have been made to wait for months after having their detention quashed due to jail authorities needing certain letters. Now, what are these letters and why does it take so long for jail authorities to obtain them?
I don't know where to start from. I mean, I think I'm still processing this story because, I mean, this story came like as a shock to me. Okay, so this story is but only in respect, particularly, it's only about what's happening in Kashmir because it's about the Public Safety Act and all these people who are we talking about. They were booked under PSA. Booked under PSA is not like it's like a preventive detention, which is the act only exists in Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir, sorry. So what I found was like first I found just one case. It's a very high profile case. I wish I could have talked about that case, but I can't because like I mean I don't want to disturb anything like about his chances of walking out of the jail. So what I had found was that despite he had received a quashment order from the Jammu and Kashmir High Court in early December, he has not walked out of the jail. And while I was talking to his lawyer in Jammu and Kashmir, he said that, he has not been able to walk out of the jail because that prisoner is lodged in a central jail in Uttar Pradesh. And the jail authorities are saying that they need clearance letters from the Home Department of Jammu and Kashmir and the district magistrate who had booked him under the PSA. So until and unless the jail authorities receive those two letters, they can't release him. And it's been 2 months, despite the court's quashment order, he has not been able to walk out of the jail. And this came as a surprise to me because I didn't see these rules that, prisoners needing clearances from the administration despite court's order to be able to walk out of the jail anywhere in any part of India.
In other cases, this is not the case.
Yeah, so I started talking to other lawyers who take up PSA cases, and all of them said to me, like I have spoken to between 5 to 10 lawyers, big, good senior advocates in Jammu and Kashmir High Court, and they all said all of their clients who are booked under PSA and who are lodged in jails in UP or Haryana, it's become an ordeal for them to obtain clearances from the Jammu and Kashmir administration. So in this story, we are just questioning that when the High Court has given them, has quashed their detention and, given the order that, they can be released from the jail, then why they also need clearances from the administration? And specifically when this process is not laid down anywhere. And this is something which the Jammu and Kashmir, two senior bureaucrats at the J&K Home Department have confirmed this to me. And they also said they didn't say this on record, but off the record, they also said that this is just a formality that we are following to ensure that they are not booked in any other cases.
Right. So I actually understand that, but I guess the problem is that there's so much delay, right, in the admin just to get that approval. I get needing a letter because...
what if they're booked in any other cases? No, so actually there is an argument to that as well. So I was talking to advocates like Rebecca John and Colin Gonsalves. They was telling me that so the system of prison works on live warrant. Like any person who is lodged in that jail, the jail administration, they have all the details of all the cases and live warrants of that person.
Right.
So if you have been released in one particular case, they have the details, like if you're required in any other case in any other state. That's how the whole system works. And even if they have to confirm, they can, just send a letter to the district magistrate.
Right. Why does it take so long?
Why is it taking months and, 2 months or 3 months and in some cases 6 months? And there was this one case in which it took 15 months just to obtain clearances. And it's not even a laid down procedure that this has to be done within 3 days or 4 days.
So what does the procedure say? And also tell us a little bit more about the PS Public Safety Act, since it is valid. It's only for Jammu and Kashmir. Everyone may not be aware of it. So tell us about this. Who can be charged under this or booked under this? And does it not have anything in written about how many days it can take to really gain a letter?
Okay, so the obtaining clearances letter is something which has started after the PSA Act was amended in 2018, which said that the Jammu and Kashmir prisoners can be lodged in jails outside the Union territory. Till then, they were lodged in prisons only in the state prisons.
And this was not happening.
No, this was not happening until 2018. This has just happened. This has started happening just before the abrogation of Article 370, a year before abrogation of Article 370. So until that time, the prisoners were lodged in jails only in the Jammu and Kashmir. And the PSA is a preventive detention act. Like if the state feels that you are you can be a threat to the national security, so they have the right to detain you. So it's not like they have, booked you any other case. They just feel that, you can be a threat, and that's why it's a preventive detention. And Jammu and Kashmir RTI movement have filed several FIRs, and they have come across very, very interesting data about which questions the PSA itself. And PSA is like also criticized by everyone, So one of the RTI was in 2018, which had said that there is no particular rule. The administration till now has not laid out any particular rule that how people can be detained. So in itself, it's it makes the act very questionable कि आप ऐसे कैसे book कर सकते हो किसी को भी, unless or until you don't have a proper laid down rules for it.
Right. And Sumedha, there's a case study in your story where a prisoner's family approached the court seeking compensation for his alleged continued illegal custody. How did that case go in court?
So the family had approached the High Court that, it's been like a year, and even despite the court's order, he has not been released from Agra Central Jail. And the court in its order said that they're really shocked to learn that how this can happen. This is a clear violation of the rules, and they had pulled up the district magistrate. So actually in Jammu and Kashmir, it's the district magistrate who books the person under the PSA, and he's the one who communicates with the jail authorities that his detention order has been quashed and that person can be released. So the Jammu and Kashmir High Court had summoned the district magistrate asking him to justify, despite our order, why you have not been able to release him. And yesterday only, while I was talking to his father, he literally broke down over the phone. He's like, he's just a 25-year-old boy, and his family depends on him, and he has lost 15 months. And then of his such crucial part of his life, 15 months. And he said for 15 months, we were just, running after, knocking doors of all the police officers in the JNK in the Union Territory, and they were meeting the MHA department officials, just to obtain those clearances. And this is the story of all those families that I've spoken to. They told me that, it's a big task for them to just communicate with the officials to obtain this clearance letter, because there's no particular laid down rule for that.
Right. And when this matter come up in the High Court and the court did question the DM, does this not set a precedent then for future cases? Did the court not say anything that could be really taken forward?
No. Nothing. That's the whole thing, because that was the only case in which the contempt of the court was filed. There are the families are now just this whole procedure. The families in Jammu and Kashmir have now accepted this whole procedure of obtaining clearances letter from the administration. They have accepted this as a norm.
Right.
They are like, theek hai, chalo, even if it's taking 1 to 3 months, at least a person will now, at least our family member will now be able to walk out of the jail after that. So they don't, and the other factor is that the lawyers were telling me that they don't want to annoy the state. They are like, if we'll file a contempt of the court, the administration might see as them being critical of the state.
Right.
So they don't want to take that risk, because what if, that person, what if the person is booked under PSA again?
Right.
So they don't want to annoy the state. So they are like, ab 2 saal to nikal hi gaye jail mein, 2-3 mahine aur nikal lete hain.
And PSA is also being used, like you mentioned in your story, against a lot of journalists in Kashmir as well over the last few years.
Yeah.
What have their cases been like? Have there been many journalists who've also suffered after their detentions being quashed, not being able to come out?
So in terms of journalists, I can't speak a lot. Because the lawyers have asked me to not talk about those cases a lot, because they are still in the process of obtaining those clearance letters, and they don't, the families and the lawyers have told me that if we'll talk about it, then the administration is already pissed with them, and they don't want to take that risk right now. But in most of the journalist cases, those journalists who were booked under the PSA, they were lodged in jails inside the Union Territory only. So that's why they were able to, walk out of the jail within a couple of hours.
Right.
So and that's the big stark, that's the stark difference, like why those prisoners who are lodged in JNK, who are lodged in jails in JNK, they don't need those clearances letters. It's just that the prisoners who are mostly in UP or Haryana jails are the ones who need those clearance letters.
Right.
That speaks a lot, I think. And why did you? And so there was this petition which was filed by senior advocate Colin Gonsalves in the Supreme Court, that why on the first place these prisoners are lodged in jails outside the Union Territory, because it's very difficult for the families to, and the law for. And their lawyers to communicate about the cases with them. Like, your family member is lodged in jail in 1,800 kilometers away from your state. Like, it's not feasible for the families to go and meet them. And when they're lodged in, UP and Haryana jails, they are in high security barracks. There will be only 1 or 2 people in those cells, and they are cut off from the world. They're not given access to talk to their families, which is not the case when they are in JNK prisons. So this is also against the prisoners' right.
Right.
And all of this is happening especially when they are booked under PSA. Like, PSA is so infamous that, there was this RTI data from 2019 to 2023, around 1,570 petitions have been filed in the JNK High Court challenging PSA, and court has quashed 900 of those PSA detention orders. It speaks a lot. Like, if the High Court has quashed 900,
then why were they in the first
place booked in the jail?
Definitely. We'll get to there's a lot more to discuss about your story and Neerja's story, and our viewers can read the stories to really get the gist of the entire report. Very detailed reports they both have done. We'll just get to the last bit of our podcast now. Recommendations. So, Neerja, let's put you on the spot since it's your first time. Anything you have to recommend to our viewers, something to watch, read, listen to, go ahead.
So, because we've discussed education at length today, I have a show about education to recommend. It's called Abbott Elementary. It's made by someone who used to be a BuzzFeed writer, and now, of course, she's a showrunner. I started watching it after doing another education story for a different publication, actually. And, there's that sense of being let down by like infrastructure and children and communities and all of that. So when I came back, I started watching Abbott Elementary, which documents the issues with the American education system, the public school system, but it does so with humor, and it really humanizes the teachers who make that education possible.
Where can we watch the show, Neerja? I have watched it, but for the others.
I think it's on Disney Plus Hotstar.
Okay, great. And Sumedha, what would you like to recommend?
I think my recommendation is Neerja's piece on Vikramaditya Motwane.
So
No, I really loved Neerja, that piece. I didn't know we'll be meeting in this on this podcast, because I remember reading it last year only, and it's not just that I'm a Motwane fan. No, it's not because of that, but because how you have written the article. And I didn't know that Chicago radio was started by Motwane family, and how you have written about the Andolan. And I especially love the lead. She has written, I think you have started with saying that Motwane's office was exactly how you had imagined it to be. So I was like, wow, reporters should be thinking that much.
Personal office within the larger Andolan office. So he named his film company after this film that his grandfather made. So his grandfather wanted to be a director, and he sort of floundered in that ambition because it's also a business family, so they had their priorities set. But Vikramaditya Motwane has named his company after that one debut film that his grandfather produced, and his own office is something of like a temple to cinema.
And you have also mentioned that, I'm so sorry, this podcast is becoming about Vikramaditya Motwane and Neerja's piece on that. But no, there's this 2 things I had to ask you. You had mentioned in that piece that, I found it interesting because another reason why I found it interesting was that, the impression I got was, they were big Congress fan because, especially because they were coming from that time. And now, when you look in today's time, I think Motwane had just made directed a movie on emergency. If I'm not wrong, Indra's Emergency, and I think he's finding it tough to get the movie released because it hints to a lot of current political scenarios. So coming from a family which has been a big time Congress supporter to now making films like which is critical of emergency, I think it speaks a lot about the kind of director he is. And secondly, I wanted to ask you, how was it meeting Vikramaditya Motwane? That's the only question. I'm so
really
sorry.
a fan. So I think that piece was a real education and understanding how famous families, business families with enough power and influence to shape the country, how they have to sometimes align with power. So there would be a time when the Motwanes and the way that they were entwined with politics would have been radical, right? Because they were trying to throw off the British yoke. In the years that followed, their support of the party was more of course, it was very supportive. And there is one review of Andolan, the film, which says that it is hagiographic. So there is certainly that element of support that, goes beyond just support. But I think at that time, nation building was also a priority for many business families.
Exactly.
This includes the Tatas, it includes many other families who have, through their business potential, through their industry potential, seen it as a way of nation building. So his own politics, of course, is an entirely different subject, but I don't think he is an inheritor of his family's legacy in that sense. There is definitely Chicago radio in the way in which it connected different parts of India to each other, and that also is very, very radical. But I think his own filmmaking has, the politics in his filmmaking is entirely different. And actually Jubilee, so when I was watching Jubilee, I was reminded of a lot of the things that he said in our interviews. I think I interviewed him 4 times for that piece, or more than that perhaps. And one of those interviews was 2 hours long, and he shifted a sound recording session to talk to me, which I was very grateful for. He was very forthcoming with details. I think in a piece like this, there is the danger of empathizing too much with your subject. But the thing is that he was so forthcoming with details about how Andolan was a flop, actually. And that is highlighted in the piece pretty evidently. It didn't do well, which is why the grandfather, I think, gave up his ambitions. He looks at his own, so he thinks of himself as the family's biographer, as like an archivist for the family. So he sees his own family history with an objectivity that makes your job as a reporter very easy.
Must read this piece.
It is a must read.
I will definitely check
What's
it out.
What's your recommendation, Tanishka?
I would like to recommend Merry Christmas. I don't know if you guys have watched it.
I have.
Have you watched it, Neerja?
Loved it.
Same. And I think a lot of people have not really embraced it as a Bollywood movie and aren't really going to watch it. So it's a great Indian mystery thriller starring the unlikely duo of Katrina Kaif and Vijay Sethupathi. But it's an absolutely amazing movie from the makers of Andhadhun, Sriram Raghavan. Yes. So people who do follow his work more than I do were very sure it will be an amazing movie.
I think I have not watched Sriram's previous work, like Ek Hasina Thi on all of those movies, but like the recent works.
I've just watched Andhadhun, but this movie was really, really nice, and it's going to come out on Netflix soon. But I think the theatre experience of watching this thriller that is also light enough but still keeps you at the edge of your seats is really wonderful. And I love how it showcases Bombay as well. So and I know you probably do as well. So
I got a slight peek into 80s or I think 90s Bombay.
Yeah, when it was called Bombay, that was how they described the time.
It's a big relief to watch movies like this, especially in a time when it's all about, like, the movie is only about warmongering and hyper-nationalism.
Exactly why this movie really stands out, and I hope more people catch it while it's still in the theatres. Shows have been reducing, so do watch it, guys, if you haven't already. And on that note, we will wind up the discussions, but do check out Neerja and Sumedha's piece. The links will be available on the show notes of this podcast. And with that, this podcast is adjourned.
Journalism at Newslaundry is powered by the public. Because when the public pays, the public is served. Visit newslaundry.com/subscription and pick a payment plan of your choice. Pay to keep news free and independent. Your future, and indeed the future of democracy, depends on it.